My name is Rob. That year, Christmas dinner was at my parents' house. The whole family was there. My brothers and their wives, my cousins, my aunts, and all the kids running around making noise like they always do. The house smelled like roasted turkey and my mother's sweet potato pie. It should have been a good night. But my wife had been fighting me for weeks leading up to Christmas, small arguments that turned into bigger ones. The tension between us was thick, and honestly, I didn't even want to come to this dinner, but I showed up anyway, because that's what I always did. When we arrived, she already had an attitude. I could see it in her face, the tight smile she gave my mother at the door, the way she barely spoke to anyone. She sat at the table like she was forced to be there, which made no sense because she was the one who insisted we couldn't miss a family gathering. Halfway through dinner, my uncle made a joke, and she responded with a rude comment. The kind of comment that makes a room go quiet for a second before people pretend they didn't hear it. I had been tolerating her behavior for years, but something about that moment made me say something. I shut her down right there at the table. I just told her that her comment was out of line and that she needed to apologize. She didn't apologize. Instead, she pushed her chair back, stood up, and walked out of the dining room without a word. Everyone's eyes followed her, then turned to me. My mother gave me that look mothers give when they want to ask questions, but no, it's not the time. I just shook my head slightly and continued eating. I wasn't going to chase her. Not anymore. The drive home was silent. She stared out the window the entire time, arms crossed, jaw tight. I didn't try to fill the silence. I was tired of being the one who always tried to fix things between us. When we got inside the house, she didn't go to the bedroom. She stood in the living room and waited for me to close the front door. I turned around and saw her standing there, trying to look strong and confident, but I could see the slight tremble in her hands. She took a breath and said the words I had expected for a long time. She wanted a divorce. I looked at her, no reaction on my face. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I just stood there and let her words hang in the air between us. She wasn't expecting that. She was expecting me to break down, to storm out, to beg her to reconsider. That was probably the script she had rehearsed in her head. The defeated husband who couldn't imagine life without her. But I gave her nothing, just silence and a blank stare, and that silence made her uncomfortable. So she pushed harder. She told me she was going to take everything in the divorce, the house, the savings, everything I had worked for over the years. And then she said the part she probably thought would destroy me. She told me she would take our son too, because he wasn't mine. She said it with a little smirk, like she had been waiting years to throw that grenade at me. Like she had been holding on to that secret as her ultimate weapon, saving it for the moment when she needed to break me completely. I looked at her calmly. No tears, no shouting, no shaking hands. I let a few seconds pass before I responded. I know. I've known for 7 months. Her face changed. Her smirk faded first. Then her eyebrows came together in confusion. Her mouth opened slightly, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. This wasn't in her script. She had planned this moment, expecting me to crumble, but instead I stood in front of her, completely calm. She didn't know what to do with that. I continued before she could recover. I told her my attorney already had the divorce papers ready. We could discuss the terms after the holidays if she wanted to keep things civil. There was no reason to ruin whatever was left of Christmas over this. Then I turned and walked into the bedroom to get ready for bed. My wife didn't follow me. She didn't say anything else that night. The power move she had been planning, maybe for weeks or even months, had just collapsed in front of her. And for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't the one left standing in confusion. She was. To understand how I ended up standing in my living room that night, completely unmoved by my wife's confession, you need to understand what the years leading up to that moment looked like. Because I didn't become this calm overnight, it took years of slow disappointment to get here. I met her when I was 25. She was 23. I was working my first real job after college, making decent money, and trying to build something stable for my future. She was charming in every way. She seemed impressed by my ambition. She made me feel like I was enough. Looking back now, I realize I was so focused on how she made me feel that I never paid attention to who she actually was when she wasn't trying to impress me. We dated for about a year and a half before I proposed. We got married a few months after that. Everything moved fast, but it didn't feel rushed at the time. It felt right. A year into the marriage, she got pregnant, and I thought my life was falling into place exactly the way I had always imagined. A wife, a son on the way, a growing career. I thought I was building something real, but the cracks started showing early. I just refused to see them for what they were. After our son was born, things changed between us. I expected some adjustment. Everyone told me the first year with a baby is hard on a marriage. So when she became distant, I blamed the stress of new motherhood. When she stopped being affectionate, I told myself it was exhaustion. When she started snapping at me over small things, I convinced myself it was hormones. I made excuses for her because I wanted to believe the woman I married was still in there somewhere. But the distance never closed. If anything, it grew wider with each passing year. My wife resented my work hours, even though my income allowed her to stay home without worrying about bills. She complained that I was never around. But when I was around, she acted like I was in her way. She stopped asking about my day. She stopped caring about the things that mattered to me. Intimacy became rare and mechanical, like a chore she had to check off a list. I would try to talk to her about it, and she would shut me down or twist it into an argument about something I did wrong. Eventually, I stopped trying. There were other signs, too. Small lies about money. Receipts for items my wife said she never bought, charges on the card for places she never mentioned going to. When I asked questions, she got defensive and made me feel like I was being controlling. So I stopped asking. Her phone was always face down on the table. She had friendships she was vague about, people she mentioned in passing but never introduced me to. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband, so I ignored the feeling in my gut that told me something wasn't right. I told myself that all marriages have rough patches. I told myself my job was to provide, and as long as I did that, things would eventually get better. I told myself my son needed both parents in the same house, and staying together was the right thing to do for him. I told myself that when work slowed down and I had more time, we would reconnect and fix what was broken between us. I kept telling myself these things year after year, waiting for a change that never came. The truth is, it never got better. I just got used to the disappointment. I got used to feeling like a guest in my own home. I got used to being tolerated instead of loved. And by the time I realized how bad things had gotten, I had already wasted over a decade convincing myself that this was just what marriage looked like. 7 months before that Christmas dinner, my entire world shifted, and my wife had no idea. It started with something simple. My son needed updated medical records for a sports physical at school. I took him to the doctor because my wife said she was busy that day. During the appointment, the doctor reviewed his file and mentioned something about blood types. He asked me about my family's medical history, and during that conversation, he mentioned my son's blood type. I didn't think much of it at the time, but something about it stuck with me on the drive home. That night, I looked it up. I'm not a medical expert, but I know how to use the internet. I found a basic chart that shows which blood types are possible based on the parents' blood types. I knew mine. I knew my wife's from a medical form I had seen years ago. And when I compared them to my son's, the result didn't make sense. According to the chart, it wasn't possible for two parents with our blood types to have a child with their blood type. There had to be a mistake somewhere. Maybe I remembered her blood type wrong. Maybe the doctor's file had an error. I told myself there was a logical explanation, but the doubt wouldn't leave me. It sat in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. For a few days, I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, that I was looking for problems where none existed. But the more I tried to push the thought away, the louder it got. I needed to know for sure. Not because I wanted my suspicions to be true, but because I needed them to be false. I needed proof that I was wrong so I could move on and stop thinking about it. I ordered a home DNA test kit online. It arrived a few days later in a plain package. I swabbed myself and my son. I told him it was for a school project about ancestry. He didn't question it. He was just a kid. He had no idea what I was really looking for. I sent the samples in and waited. 3 weeks felt like 3 months. Every day I checked my email for the results. Part of me hoped I would feel stupid when they came back, confirming what I already believed, that my son was mine, that my gut feeling was wrong, and that I could bury this whole thing and never think about it again. The results came back on a Tuesday afternoon. When I opened the email and read the words on the screen, they never sank in. 0% probability of paternity. The boy I had raised for 11 years, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the boy I had stayed up with when he was sick, the boy I had worked overtime to provide for, was not biologically mine. My wife had been carrying this secret for over a decade. She had watched me bond with this child, love this child, and sacrifice for this child, and she never said a word. She let me believe a lie every single day for 11 years. I sat in that parking lot for over an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling something inside me go cold. The first 2 weeks after I got those results were the hardest of my life. I couldn't function the way I normally did. I went to work, but I wasn't really there. My mind was somewhere else, replaying every moment of my marriage and seeing it through new eyes. Every memory felt tainted now. Every smile she gave me, every time she said she loved me, every moment I thought we were building something real, it was all built on a lie. I called in sick twice during those 2 weeks. I couldn't face the world. I sat alone in my car or drove to random places just to be away from the house. I didn't want to look at her. I didn't want to look at my son either, even though I knew none of this was his fault. He was just a child. He didn't choose this. But every time I saw his face, I saw the proof of her betrayal, and it made my chest tight. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to walk into the house, throw the DNA results on the table, and demand answers. I wanted to scream at her and ask how she could do this to me. I wanted to burn everything down and let her feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But something stopped me. Maybe it was a survival instinct. Maybe it was the small, rational part of my brain that hadn't been destroyed by the shock. Whatever it was, it told me to wait. It told me that acting on emotion right now would only make things worse for me. So instead of confronting her, I started researching. I spent hours online reading about paternity fraud and divorce laws. I read forums where men shared their stories, men who had been in my exact situation. Some of them had confronted their wives immediately and regretted it. They let their emotions take over, and it cost them in the divorce. They lost custody of the children they had raised. They lost their homes. They lost their savings. The courts didn't care about their pain. The courts only cared about process, evidence, and legal precedent. What I learned during those weeks sobered me. In many states, the man listed on the birth certificate is considered the legal father, regardless of DNA. That meant I could still be on the hook for child support even if I proved the child wasn't biologically mine. I also learned that acting rashly, such as confronting her, moving money, or making threats, could be used against me in court. Judges don't look kindly on men who react with anger, even when that anger is justified. The system isn't designed to protect men like me. It's designed to process us. And if I wanted to come out of this with anything left, I needed to be smart. About 2 months after the discovery, I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney. I walked into that office carrying the DNA result and a list of questions I had written down during my late-night research sessions. The attorney listened to everything I had to say without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and gave me the most important advice I had ever received. He told me that I had something most men in my situation didn't have. I knew the truth before she knew I knew. That was an advantage, and I shouldn't waste it. He told me not to confront her, not to tell anyone, not to change my behavior at home in any way that might alert her. He told me to prepare quietly, document everything, and let him build a case that would protect me when the time came to file. He said the men who won these situations were the ones who stayed calm and played the long game. The men who lost were the ones who let their emotions drive their decisions. I left that office with a clear plan, and for the next couple of months, I followed it. I kept the DNA test results in a secure location. I wasn't going to let her ever find out what I knew prematurely. I started paying closer attention to her spending. I documented every reckless purchase, every overdraft, every lie she told about where the money went. I didn't confront her about any of it. I just took screenshots, saved receipts, and built a paper trail that showed a pattern of financial irresponsibility. My attorney said this would matter when it came time to divide assets and argue against alimony. I saved key conversations, text messages in which she spoke to me disrespectfully, arguments where she threatened me or belittled me, moments where her true attitude came through in writing. I didn't manipulate these conversations or bait her into saying things. I just let her be herself and made sure I had proof of who she really was. I opened a personal savings account in my name only. I didn't move large sums of money illegally or hide assets in ways that would get me in trouble later. I quietly set aside what I could from my own income, building a small emergency fund to help me survive the first few months of separation if things got ugly. At home, I kept my behavior exactly the same. I didn't act distant or suspicious. I didn't pick more fights than usual. I didn't give her any reason to think something had changed. She had no idea I knew the truth. She thought she was still in control, and I needed her to believe that. During this time, I also started spending more genuine time with my son, not because my attorney told me to, but because I realized that, regardless of DNA, I had raised this boy. I had been his father in every way that mattered. Biology didn't erase 11 years of memories. It didn't erase the love I felt for him, even though that love was now mixed with pain I couldn't fully describe. I wasn't going to punish him for what his mother did, so I showed up for him. I helped with his homework. I took him to his games. I had real conversations with him about his life, his friends, and his future. I built a relationship with him that was based on choice, not obligation. I also started seeing a therapist. I went privately, during work hours, so she wouldn't know. I needed somewhere to process everything I was feeling without it spilling out at home. The grief, the anger, the sense of betrayal, and the confusion about what to do next. That therapist helped me stay functional during the hardest months of my life. Without those sessions, I don't know if I could have kept the mask on as long as I did. And during all of this, I did my own research on the side. I looked at her behavior patterns. I paid attention to the names she mentioned, the places she went, and the friends she talked about a little too often. I didn't hire a private investigator or do anything dramatic. I just watched and listened. And eventually, the pieces started to come together. There was a friend who lived outside the country, someone she used to mention casually in conversations years ago, back around the time she got pregnant. The way she talked about him was always a little too light, a little too careful. I couldn't prove anything concrete, but in my gut, I knew. Through all of this, there were things I made sure not to do. I didn't confront her or the other man. I didn't tell my family or my friends. I didn't use my son as a pawn. I refused to become the villain in this story just because I was the victim. I played the long game. Not for revenge, not to hurt her. I did it for freedom. I wanted out of this marriage on my terms, with my dignity and my future intact. And by the time she stood in that living room on Christmas night, trying to break me with her confession, I had already done all my grieving. I had already accepted the truth. I had already prepared for what came next. Her big reveal meant nothing because I had spent 7 months becoming a man she didn't recognize anymore, a man who was ready. The days following that Christmas night were strange. There was a tension in the house that felt different from all the years before. Before, the tension came from unspoken frustrations and buried resentments. Now, it came from the fact that she had lost control of the situation and didn't know how to regain it. For over a decade, she had been the one who decided the emotional temperature of our home. She decided when we fought and when we made peace. She decided when I was in her good graces and when I was frozen out. But after that night, the dynamic shifted, unsettling her. She tried to start arguments in the days that followed. She would bring up something small, anything she could twist into a confrontation. I could see what she was doing. She wanted me to engage. She wanted the familiar chaos of our old patterns because at least that was territory she understood, but I didn't give her that. Every time she tried to escalate, I responded the same way. I told her calmly that we would discuss everything through our attorneys. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't take the bait. I just repeated the same line and walked away. It drove her crazy. She accused me of being cold. She accused me of not caring about our son. She accused me of trying to manipulate her by staying calm. Every accusation was an attempt to drag me into an emotional reaction, and every time, I refused to give her one. I had spent 7 months preparing for this. I had already made peace with the fact that my marriage was over. She was trying to fight a version of me that no longer existed. We lived in the same house for a few more weeks while the legal process began. It was uncomfortable, but I kept my distance. I slept in the guest room. I didn't engage with her unless it was absolutely necessary. And when it was necessary, I kept it short and factual. I treated her like a stranger I was legally tied to, because emotionally, that's exactly what she had become. Eventually, she realized that I wasn't going to break. She stopped trying to provoke me and started focusing on her own legal strategy. That's when the real battle began. Her approach to the divorce was exactly what I expected. She painted herself as the victim. She claimed I had been emotionally absent throughout the marriage, that I prioritized work over family, and that she had suffered in silence for years. She pushed hard for primary custody of our son, arguing that she had been the one who was always home with him while I was busy with my career. She demanded the house. She demanded alimony. She wanted to walk away from the marriage with everything I had built while giving up nothing in return. She also tried to spin the DNA revelation as an act of honesty rather than a decade-long deception. Her attorney framed it as her finally coming clean, as if that somehow made her the noble one in this situation. They avoided calling it what it was: fraud. They avoided acknowledging that she had let me believe a lie for 11 years, let me pour my time and money and love into a child she knew might not be mine, and said nothing until she thought it would benefit her in a divorce. My strategy was different. I didn't try to play the victim. I came in with facts. I presented the documented spending patterns I had collected over those months. I showed the financial irresponsibility, the lies about where money went, and the reckless decisions she made while contributing nothing to the household income. I showed that I had been the sole provider for over a decade, that everything we had was built on my work, while she stayed home and spent freely without accountability. I clearly and calmly demonstrated her deception. The DNA results. The timeline of the affair was based on the evidence I had pieced together. I let the facts speak for themselves, and I stayed calm throughout every hearing, every meeting, every moment where she or her attorney tried to provoke me. I gave them nothing to use against me. The outcome was not a total victory. Anyone who tells you they won everything in a divorce is either lying or exaggerating. The legal system doesn't work that way. There are no clean wins. There are only degrees of loss, and the goal is to lose as little as possible. I still owed child support. In my state, the man listed on the birth certificate is the legal father, regardless of biology. It didn't matter that the DNA test proved I wasn't his biological parent. The law saw me as his father, and the law required me to pay. That part stung, not because of the money, but because it felt like the system was punishing me for being deceived. But I accepted it. I had raised the boy for 11 years. Custody was split, but I got primary residence. Her attorney pushed hard for her to have the children most of the time, but she couldn't demonstrate stability. She had no job. She had no income independent of me. She had a documented history of financial irresponsibility and emotional volatility. The court looked at the evidence and decided that the child would be better off primarily with me. That was the outcome I cared about most. I got the house. Alimony was limited to a short term because the court recognized that she was capable of working and had simply chosen not to for years. She would receive support for a set period while she got on her feet, and then it would end. That was as good as I could hope for given the circumstances. I didn't win everything, but I walked away with my sanity intact. I walked away with primary custody of the son I had raised, regardless of what the DNA said. I walked away with most of my retirement savings protected. And I walked away without any false accusations on my record, which was something I had feared from the beginning. I had seen other men get destroyed by claims that weren't true, and I was grateful that didn't happen to me. She walked away bitter. She didn't get the house she thought was hers. She didn't have the easy life she thought she would. She had enough to start over, but starting over at her age, with no work history and no skills, was not the future she had imagined for herself. The smug confidence she had that night when she told me about the DNA, the certainty that she had already won, was long gone by the time the final papers were signed. The legal process took almost 2 years from start to finish. By the time it was officially over, I was exhausted in ways I didn't know a person could be. I had my freedom, but freedom came with scars I would carry for a long time. My relationship with my son was complicated. It still is. I love him. That hasn't changed. Biology doesn't erase 11 years of being his father. But there's a weight between us now that wasn't there before, a truth we both have to live with. We had hard conversations after the divorce was finalized. I didn't lie to him or hide what happened. When he was old enough to understand, I told him the truth as honestly as I could. I told him that his mother had kept a secret from both of us, and that I had only found out recently. I told him that no matter what any test said, I had chosen to be his father, and that choice still stood. I told him he didn't have to feel guilty or responsible for any of it, because none of it was his fault. He was just a kid caught in the middle of adult failures. He struggled with it. He went through phases of anger and confusion. For a while, he blamed his mother. He resented her for the lies and for tearing the family apart. Their relationship became strained in ways that might never fully heal. She tried to rebuild with him, but he kept her at a distance. I didn't encourage that. I never spoke badly about her in front of him. But I also didn't force him to forgive her before he was ready. That was his journey to take at his own pace. As for me, I was free, but I was not whole. The betrayal left marks on me that didn't fade quickly. I had trust issues that showed up in every new relationship I tried to build. I second-guessed everything. I looked for signs of deception even when there were none. I kept people at a distance because letting someone in felt dangerous. Therapy helped, but it didn't fix everything. Some wounds just take time. Some wounds never fully close. I continued seeing my therapist for 2 years after the divorce was finalized. Those sessions kept me grounded. They helped me process the grief, not just for the marriage, but for the life I thought I had. I had to mourn the version of reality I believed in for over a decade. I had to accept that the woman I married was never who I thought she was, and the family I thought I was building was built on sand. Her life continued too. She wasn't destroyed the way some people might expect. She eventually got a job, an entry-level position since she had no real work history. She had to adjust to a lifestyle she wasn't prepared for, one in which she had to provide for herself rather than rely on someone else. Her relationship with our son remained strained, and from what I heard, the biological father wanted nothing to do with her or the boy. He had moved on with his own life and had no interest in being part of theirs. She was left to deal with the consequences of her choices alone. I spent a lot of time after the divorce reflecting on everything that happened, not just the betrayal itself, but all the years leading up to it. The signs I ignored. The decisions I made were made out of fear rather than wisdom. The moments where I could have protected myself but chose to look the other way because it was easier. If my story is going to mean anything to the men watching this, it has to be more than just entertainment. It has to teach something. So let me share what I learned, broken down into the stages of life where these lessons matter most. The first lesson is simple, but it is ignored by almost every young man blinded by attraction. You need to vet the person you're considering spending your life with. And I don't mean just enjoying their company or feeling chemistry with them. I mean, watching how they treat other people when they have nothing to gain. How does she treat waiters at restaurants? How does she speak about her friends when they're not around? How does she handle situations where she doesn't get her way? These small moments reveal character in ways that romantic dinners and good conversations never will. The version of someone you see when they're trying to impress you is a performance. The version you see when they think no one is important is the truth. The second lesson is about money. You need to discuss financial values early in the relationship, before emotions get too deep to think clearly. How does she view spending versus saving? Does she believe in building something together, or does she expect to be provided for without contributing? Does she have debt, and if so, how did she accumulate it? These are not romantic conversations, but they are essential ones. Financial incompatibility destroys more marriages than infidelity does. Most people just don't talk about it because it's less dramatic. Romance fades. Bills don't. The third lesson is about patience. Don't rush into marriage because you're in love. Time reveals what attraction hides. A person can only keep a mask on for so long. If you take your time and go through difficult seasons together before committing legally, you'll start to see who they really are when life gets hard. The woman who seems perfect during the honeymoon phase might become someone completely different when the excitement wears off. Give yourself enough time to review both versions before you sign away your future. Once you're married, the rules change. You're in a legal and financial partnership, not just a romantic relationship. That means you need to protect yourself even as you build a life together. Trust is important, but blind trust is not a virtue. It's a liability. You should trust your spouse, but you should also stay aware of what's happening in your own life. Know where the money goes. Know what accounts exist in both your names. Know who her friends are and how she spends her time. This isn't about being paranoid or controlling. It's about being present. A man who pays no attention to his own household is a man who will be blindsided when something goes wrong. Keep important records accessible: bank statements, tax returns, communication records, documentation of major purchases and decisions. You don't need to obsess over this, but you should have access to these things and know where they are. If your marriage ever falls apart, these records will matter more than you can imagine. The legal system runs on evidence, not emotions. The man with documentation is the man with options. Stay connected to your children. No matter what is happening between you and your wife, your relationship with your kids should never depend on the quality of your marriage. Even during the years when things were bad between my wife and me, I made time for my son. I didn't do it because I was planning for a divorce. I did it because being his father mattered to me. But when the divorce did happen, that relationship saved me. Courts pay attention to who has been present in a child's life. Don't let your frustration with your spouse push you away from your kids. They need you, and you'll need that bond if the worst happens. Learn to recognize patterns. One moment of disrespect can be a mistake. Everyone has bad days. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're stressed or tired. But repeated disrespect is not a mistake. It's character. If your wife consistently belittles you, dismisses your concerns, or treats you with contempt, that pattern is telling you something. Don't rationalize it away. Don't convince yourself that it will get better on its own. Patterns don't change unless someone forces them to change. And if she's not willing to change, you need to start thinking about your future. If you ever find yourself in the situation I was in, where you discover something that shatters the foundation of your marriage, do not confront immediately. I know that's hard to hear. I know every instinct in your body will scream at you to demand answers, to explode, to make her feel the pain you're feeling. But emotion is not your friend in that moment. Acting on anger will hurt you legally, financially, and strategically. The confrontation can come later. First, you need to protect yourself. Before you talk to anyone, talk to a lawyer, not your best friend, not your mother, not your brother, a lawyer. Someone who understands the laws in your state and can give you professional advice on how to proceed. Your friends and family will give you emotional support, but they can also give you bad advice that feels right but leads you into traps. A lawyer will tell you what actually matters in court and how to position yourself for the best possible outcome. Once you have legal guidance, prepare silently. Document what you need to document. Secure evidence in safe locations. Build your case without alerting her that anything has changed. The man who acts rationally will always have an advantage over the one who acts emotionally. She doesn't need to know that you know. Let her believe she still has the upper hand. That belief will make her careless, and her carelessness will become your advantage. While you're preparing, protect your mental health. Find a therapist who can help you process what you're going through without spilling your pain into your everyday life. Therapy is not a weakness. It's maintenance. You wouldn't ignore a wound on your body and expect it to heal perfectly on its own. Don't do that with wounds on your mind either. The grief, anger, and confusion need somewhere to go. A therapist gives you that space without the risk of saying something you'll regret to someone who might use it against you later. Finally, learn the laws that apply to your situation. Paternity laws vary wildly from state to state. Divorce outcomes depend on specific rules about asset division, custody, and support. What happened to a friend in another state might not apply to you at all. Educate yourself. Knowledge is protection. When the legal battle is over and you're standing in the wreckage of what used to be your life, the real work begins. Rebuilding. Don't let bitterness define the next chapter of your story. I understand the temptation. I lived it. There were moments after my divorce when the anger felt like the only thing keeping me moving. But bitterness is a poison you drink while expecting someone else to die. It doesn't hurt her. It hurts you. It keeps you stuck in the past when you should be building a future. You survived. Now you have to actually live. Remember that your child is not the enemy. They didn't choose any of this. They're caught between two parents whose relationship fell apart, and they're processing their own pain in their own way. Don't punish them for what their mother did. Rebuild slowly. There's no rush to prove to the world that you've moved on. You don't need a new relationship immediately. You don't need to show everyone how successful you are without her. Give yourself time to heal. Give yourself permission to be alone while you figure out who you are outside of that marriage. The right people and opportunities will come when you're ready for them. Rushing the process will only lead you into new mistakes before you've finished learning from the old ones. Now, I want to speak directly to the women watching this who might see themselves in my ex-wife's choices. Not to attack you, not to humiliate you, but to give you a warning that might save you from the path she walked. If you're considering deception, whether it's paternity fraud, hidden affairs, or financial manipulation, understand one thing clearly: the secret will surface. We live in an age of DNA test kits sold at pharmacies, ancestry websites that reveal family connections with a saliva sample, medical situations that expose blood type inconsistencies. The walls that used to protect these secrets no longer exist. Whatever you're hiding, it will come out. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but eventually, the truth always finds its way into the light. And when it does, the fallout will be worse than if you had been honest from the start. Children learn the truth too. Maybe not when they're young, but as they grow older, pieces start to come together. Whispered conversations they weren't supposed to hear, family members who let things slip, their own research when they're old enough to ask questions. And when they find out that you lied to them about something as fundamental as who their father is, they don't forgive easily. Some of them never forgive at all. The relationship you thought you were protecting by lying will be destroyed by the lie itself. If you think you've trapped a safe provider who will never leave because he's too scared or too comfortable, understand that patience and stupidity are not the same thing. The quiet man who tolerates your behavior year after year might not be weak. He might be watching. He might be documenting. He might be building a case so strong that by the time you try to use your secrets as weapons, he's already prepared a defense you never saw coming. Silence is not ignorance. Sometimes it's a strategy. Financial dependence on a man you don't respect is not power. It's a leash. You might feel secure because he pays the bills and you control the home, but that security evaporates the moment he decides to leave. If you've spent years not working, not building skills, not creating anything of your own, you'll find yourself starting from zero in middle age, with nothing to show for the time you wasted. The lifestyle you enjoyed was never yours. It was his. And when he takes it with him, you'll realize too late that you traded your future for comfort that was never guaranteed. If you're planning some kind of power move, a dramatic reveal meant to humiliate him and give you the upper hand in a divorce, reconsider. Lawyers have seen every trick. Judges have heard every story. You are not as clever as you think you are, and the legal system is not designed to reward theatrics. Burning his reputation in public often burns yours too. Mutual destruction is still destruction. The smug moment when you think you've won will fade fast. The consequences of that moment will last for years. If your marriage is dead, leave honestly. I know that's not easy. I know there are financial fears, social pressures, and a dozen reasons why deception feels like the safer path. But deception poisons everything it touches, including your own future. The lies you tell to get out of a marriage will follow you into whatever comes next. They'll affect how your children see you. They'll affect how you see yourself. An honest ending, no matter how painful, is always better than a dishonest one. Your children are watching everything you do. They're learning from your choices even when you think they're not paying attention. They'll either model your behavior when they grow up, or they'll resent you for it. If you teach them that deception is acceptable, don't be surprised when they deceive you later. If you show them that manipulation is how adults solve problems, don't be surprised when they become manipulative themselves. The legacy you leave your children is built in the small moments you think no one notices. And finally, never underestimate the quiet man, the one who doesn't argue back, the one who seems like he's just going along with everything, the one you think you have completely figured out. He might be documenting every disrespectful text message. He might be saving every receipt that shows your spending habits. He might have already talked to a lawyer. He might be months ahead of you in a game you didn't even know you were playing. Silence is not ignorance. Sometimes, it's the sound of someone preparing. My ex-wife thought holding a secret gave her power. For 11 years, she walked through our marriage believing she had something over me, a truth I didn't know, a weapon she could deploy whenever she needed to. She thought my ignorance made her safe. She thought my stability meant I would never leave. She thought she was in control. What she didn't realize was that the game ended the moment she stopped being the only one who knew the truth. I share my story because somewhere out there, a man is sitting in a marriage that feels wrong, ignoring the signs, convincing himself that things will get better. I want that man to know that he's not crazy. His instincts are trying to tell him something. And if he ever discovers that his worst fears are true, I want him to know that there's a way through it. A way that doesn't require him to explode or beg or lose everything. Stay calm, get informed, prepare quietly, protect yourself and your children, and when the time is right, walk away with your head high. Freedom is possible. I'm living proof.